really bad eggs. Drink up, me hearties, yo-ho.
Stellaris Developer Diary 229 is out, and it focuses exclusively on the newly announced Aquatic Species Pack. We are going to find out everything that Species Pack will include, as well as finding out what that specifically means. We're going to get to look at the origins, the civics, the traits, and the new ascension perk. Without any further ado, and no pun intended, let's dive in. If you enjoy this video, please dive on that like button. First, and possibly most importantly, they have defined what exactly the new Aquatic Species Pack is going to include. This is going to include 15 new aquatic portraits, 1 aquatic themed robotic portrait, water themed shipset, and then 2 origins, those being Here Be Dragons and Ocean Paradise, a civic, the Angler's Civic, an ascension perk, the Hydrocentric Ascension perk, a species trait, Aquatic, and finally, possibly most importantly, an aquatic advisor voice inspired by high seas fiction.
I am us!
If that advisor voice isn't a pirate themed voice, I'm going to be very disappointed personally, but I am definitely hopeful that's what we're going to get there. Dolphinoids are now going to be a part of the game. Grekulf, the game director who's written this dev diary, he said that no longer will he be forced to play Stellaris without Dolphinoids. And quite interestingly here actually, he talked about the fact that Dolphinoids have been used in narrative examples during design meetings for many years, even prior to the release of Stellaris all the way back in 2016. And he's now very happy with them finally becoming a reality. I suppose the only real comment I've got to make here is that they've definitely had it on their minds for a while, and I'm very sad that we have been missing out on dolphins and dolphinoids for so long. And then we jump straight into the meat and potatoes of this new DLC, the first civic, the Angler's Civic. Now what is this going to do? Well, only on wet worlds, I believe that means ocean worlds, your continental worlds and your tropical worlds, your farmer jobs will be replaced with anglers. These anglers will produce 8 food and 2 trade value. That is actually quite a lot of extra resources. A regular farmer produces only 6 food base. Now you're getting an extra 2 food and an extra 2 trade value. And as we know in this update, trade value is quite a useful and versatile resource. On your ocean world specifically, agriculture districts will have no cap, meaning that you can have as many agriculture districts as you have planet size on the world if you want. They've also reduced the cost of agriculture districts on all wet climate worlds by 50 minerals, and each agriculture district will provide an additional job. This job being Pearl Diver jobs, which will produce 3 consumer goods and 2. Now there are 2 kind of options here with this Pearl Diver job. Either it requires no upkeep, which possibly it does, possibly you simply produce 3 consumer goods and 2 trade value, in which case I think this is actually quite a good job. And on the other hand, if it does require some sort of mineral upkeep or something like that, then perhaps it's not so great. On the other hand, maybe it requires a food upkeep. I don't know. Usually the upkeeps aren't written in these sorts of things. So we'll just have to wait and see there. But so far, it could be really great, this Civic. Though I can see some issues. There's only so much food you can trade for energy. Whilst having said that, producing lots and lots of trade value, or at least producing a small amount of extra trade value with your farmers would be good. This does improve the effectiveness of farmers, and again, we might be in a situation now, if you take anglers, it's better to build farming districts and sell the food for energy than build energy districts. Possibly. We'll have to wait and see to find out what the math does. Next in the list, we have the Ascension perk tied into this DLC. This is the Hydrocentric Ascension perk. Now, they've noted that one of their first ideas related to the aquatic theme was being able to mine ice and bring it back to your ocean worlds to make them larger. The idea originally bounced between being a civic or an origin, but then they realized it would make much more sense to have it as an Ascension perk. So this is the first time they've added an Ascension perk with a species pack, which is also pretty fun. What does this Ascension perk do though? Well, first off, terraforming costs of ocean worlds is reduced by 25%. That's pretty cool. You, if you are aquatic, are probably going to be terraforming even wet worlds into ocean worlds to get some of the bonuses you get for production from the aquatic trait. We'll get into that a little bit later, but this is going to allow you as well to construct ice mining stations on star bases. Now, what are ice mining stations? Well, they enable the expand planetary sea decision on ocean worlds. Also, species with the aquatic trait gain 50% greater benefit for living on ocean worlds, but also get penalties for living on non-wet worlds, and the penalties they do have are amplified. And we are still not done. It also unlocks the Deluge Colossus weapon.
Squirtle, water gun attack now! Squirtle.
Note here though, it does also require you to have taken and completed the Colossus project to get this extra part of the Ascension perk, but if you do that in the game, you'll probably be doing that later on, whereas this Hydrocentric is available at any point once you have the terrestrial sculpting technology and you have an empty Ascension perk slot. You do also, in addition to that, have to have the trait aquatic, but that may only mean that you have to have some aquatic pops in your empire. Possibly you don't have to have your primary species as aquatic, so if you went out and conquered some Dolphinoids, heaven forbid, you could then take Hydrocentric and start making these Dolphinoids very, very powerful on their ocean worlds. So what the Deluge Colossus weapon does, they've not specified for sure, but they have said that it unleashes you can be unleashed to create a watery grave for your enemies. I suspect that means you not only kill everything on the planet, but also terraform it to ocean world type, hopefully. That means that this is a much better version of a neutron sweep. They've also actually shown us how the ice mining stations work. Well, an ice mining station on your starbase will give you increased mining station output in the entire system, as well as enable the expand planetary sea decision, which will increase the planet size by 1. Now, they've given us how much it's going to cost here. It's going to cost you 1,000 energy and 50 influence, and it's going to take 720 days or 2 years to complete. Ice will be harvested from a system with an ice mining station on the starbase. They've also noted that ice asteroids can be mined only once and frozen worlds up to 3 times. This is going to mean that as an aquatic player, you're going to have something of a different map to other players. You're actually probably going to be looking for frozen worlds and for ice asteroids and trying to take systems with them in as you can use them. I also assume there'll be some sort of mechanic where you can exhaust these asteroids and frozen worlds, and it will show you when it's being used for this decision. And just to briefly talk about the expand planetary sea decision, it does seem to be rather expensive just to increase the planet size by 1. Personally, I suspect this may end up being more of a gimmick than a particularly useful part of the game until you're getting quite into the mid to late game where your planets are all full. But yeah, we'll just have to see how that shakes out. Personally, this part I'm not massively excited by. We've talked quite a bit about the aquatic species trait, but now we get to actually see what it's going to do. So, they've added a new 0 point cost, that's important to note here, this costs no points, aquatic species trait. It doesn't require you to have an aquatic portrait, but it will require your species to start on an ocean world. That means that any species can be aquatic, and the aquatic species portraits may not necessarily have the aquatic trait. They've done this in an attempt to help those that want more freedom of choice for your species portraits while still keeping the aquatic theme intact. The trait also gains additional bonuses whenever the hydrocentric ascension perk has been selected. Now, what will be interesting to see is if you can mix aquatic and lithoid. That is going to be very, very interesting if we can do something like that, or possibly even aquatic and necroid, but we'll just have to see when it lands. The aquatic trait gives you plus 20% ocean habitability. That means that basically all ocean worlds will be at 100% habitability for your species. Housing usage on ocean worlds minus 10%. Food, energy and mineral output on ocean worlds plus 10%. But then we've got the negatives, and the negatives here are quite big. Housing usage on non-wet worlds plus 30%. So that means on any dry or alpine worlds, the frozen world, you get plus 30% housing usage and minus 20% habitability on those worlds. So that means you'll be at 0% habitability on any worlds that aren't wet, basically, before you get technology or anything like that involved as well. And there's one final thing to note here, which is a little odd, which is that hull strength from admirals plus 10%. That means you're going to get some sort of bonus now where your admirals get an additional 10%. I'm wondering if you can have aquatic and clone army, meaning you can get your clone army admirals to get massive bonuses to fire rate, as well as an additional plus 10% hull strength. That will be very interesting to see. They've noted that the hydrocentric ascension perk also amplifies all of the effects of this trait. The Ocean Paradise Origin allows you to have the ultimate watery start. Ocean Paradise, and I'm going to use Paradox's words here, allows you to start on a chonky size 30 planet filled with a plentiful bounty of resources. When you combine this with the aquatic species trait and the hydrocentric ascension perk, the Ocean Paradise Origin gives significant advantages to starting with an aquatic species. You will want to keep your friends close and your anemones closer. That's a fantastic dad joke. I just want to give a moment for that one. Now that that's settled in, let's look at what it actually does. So you will start in a nebula with an ice asteroids in your home system. If we can get both lithoids and aquatic trait on the same species, which we don't know for certain yet, but it might be possible given what they've said, that is going to mean you could have terravores which start in a nebula, a very, very scary prospect. So this origin is going to make your homeworld size 30, as I already mentioned, and it's going to make it rich with food deposits and give you bonuses to happiness, pop growth speed, and output. But what are the downsides? Well, guaranteed habitable planets are instead frozen worlds. And I don't think that means the ice climate world, the alpine tundra worlds. This, I believe, means actual frozen worlds which are not habitable. So it's kind of like a Gaia world start, but on steroids. We will have to see what the actual pop growth modifier here is, because if it is high, then maybe it's quite good, but otherwise it could be quite a limiter. Definitely, though, something I'm starting to see here is that all of these bonuses together are going to mean that we can get some very, very powerful individual worlds which are very large in size. Maybe with the new rework coming to Administrative Cap and Unity in the next patch after the one that's coming up next, so the one after that one 3.3, as we have 3.2 coming up very soon, maybe with that rework, if tall starts becoming viable again, it might be that ocean aquatic species is the way to go tall. Possibly. Don't quote me on it yet until we find out some more hard details, but that's just the thoughts that I'm starting to see here. And this next origin is, I believe, the ultimate origin in anti-rush technology. If you've ever had a multiplayer game or even a single player game where you were rushed and destroyed by a merciless opponent, empire, whether that's an AI or a player, now we may have something just for you. Here Be Dragon's origin starts you off in a unique symbiotic relationship with an ether drake. And this ether drake, it doesn't quite look like the regular ether drake, it's more of a watery version of an ether drake. It's quite interesting, but without spoiling too much, they have said that the drake will essentially protect you while you keep it happy, but it is not controlled by you, and you must see it as something of a guardian or an ally as long as you keep it happy. And in the origin they've noted the dragon may protect you from harm, but beware its wrath should you displease it. This origin is going to mean that you have a Leviathan in your home system, and that will basically protect you. Now, Leviathans are quite difficult to kill in the very early game. They do have quite high health and damage output, so this is going to be able to protect you from an early, and I really do mean very early, rush from any enemy empires. And in addition to your own fleet, it may make it very, very difficult for another empire to take your home system from you, because it will be so heavily defended. Finally, they've indicated that next week they're going to be doing a deep dive, no pun intended, into the art behind the aquatic ships and a unique model for the Ether Drake. Now, here is what one of the aquatic ships looks like. I believe this is a battleship. And actually, I really do like these portraits. That's kind of a beautiful design, to be quite frank. Kind of reminiscent in some ways of the Disney movie Atlantis. I'm seeing a lot of animal design elements incorporated into this.